Hey there, Andre, Joseph, and Jeff Galashaw. Andre Joseph and Jeff Galashaw and the Unfinished Business Television podcast. I want to give a big shout out to the Unfinished Business Television podcast. This here is Frank Whaley, and have you seen The Jimmy Show? And if not, why not? Because it's freaking awesome. And I happen to have written, directed, and starred in this motion picture back in 2001 with Ethan Hawke and Carla Gugino, John Leguizamo. It's a great movie. You should see it. You should check out the Unfinished Business Television podcast with Andre Joseph and Jeff Galashaw, which is equally as awesome. This is Frank Whaley, signing off.
Hey folks, welcome back. It's another new edition of Unfinished Business Television, and I am your host, Jeff Galashaw, at Unfinished B2. You can find me on social media almost everywhere under that name. Maybe not Twitter or X, whatever it is. But we are back with a brand new episode, and with me, as always, is my co-host, who is slightly under the weather, Mr. Andre Joseph of AJ Epics Productions.
I miss the good old days of a good Cadbury Easter egg.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm not into the Cadbury Easter eggs. But do you remember there was like egg? I think it had like plastic coating, but then you'd open it and it would just be pure milk chocolate.
Yeah, and I'm blanking on the name on that too. That was probably the better candy.
Exactly. Do they even make that anymore?
They do, but I think it's under another name.
Okay. As you can see, forgive me for the wrinkly attire, but it has decided to be warm outside, which is why my co-host is a little under the weather with the fluctuating weather in New York. It can't all be like California 96 most of the year. So this is our movie review edition. Remember, only you can prevent forest fires or fires in general these days. But we're going to talk about 6 recent releases, probably half of them in 2025, but we just got around to them. And we are going to review them or give our opinion on them. You can check them out or not. Some are in theaters. We'll alert you as to which one are still in theaters and which ones you can try and catch, even if it's bad, on which streaming service. Okay, so without further ado, let's get to our first film. We're going to talk about Springsteen, Deliver Me From Nowhere. This is in going with all these big screen attractions of biopics on the big screen, but wisely, finally, instead of trying to encompass the whole legend of a person, maybe picking a particular time in their life to focus on the drama with. So for this movie, directed by Scott Cooper, we focus on Bruce Springsteen and what basically made him write and record the album Nebraska, his historic album which is actually before Born in the USA, the one that made him a global superstar, but he's already popular, but he has an artistic need to put voice to his depression while dealing with his family issues. Here we have Jeremy Allen White playing Bruce Springsteen. Yeah. And Jeremy Strong as his producer and friend, John Landau, with a pretty recognizable cast. Paul Walter Hauser, friend of the show, as Mike Batalon, Stephen Graham and Gabby Hoffman as Bruce Springsteen's parents. You have Odessa Young playing an amalgam of all these women Bruce dated before settling down. And it comes at a precious time. I guess some of this film for me is like first world person problems. Like, I'm a global superstar, but I got family issues. But here's the thing. Now, as much as I'm not the biggest Timothy Chalamet fan, I can say that Bob Dylan biopic affected me and audiences a bit more than expected. There was some kind of depth, but there was also still a kind of mysticism and not explain it all in that film that made you like fascinated and just really into the film. I didn't feel anything when it came to this film. And that's the central problem. It chooses to explain it all, even though Bruce Springsteen is kind of obviously inspired by Bob Dylan and kind of has a history. He's a little more open than Bob Dylan. But here I felt like everything was explained. We get glimpses of his kind of rock star life, being popular, but not necessarily the global superstar he is now. And I don't know. There was nothing wrong with Jeremy Allen White's performance, other than the only thing him and Bruce Springsteen seem to have in common is hair. But I don't know. Maybe it's because I know I'm not a big Springsteen expert, but I know about his marriages. And, him sitting here with the relationship with Odessa Young's character. I think the character's name is Faye, and how he's talking about his parents and their divorce. And I guess that felt a little false, but I guess it was a way of bringing an audience surrogate into all of it, if you understand what I'm saying. But even though Scott Cooper is a talented director, there just felt like there was a whole missing element through this film that brings you in and makes you feel something about the film or even the character. Andre, what did you think about Springsteen, Deliver Me from Nowhere?
Well, I got to admit, I'm not the biggest Bruce Springsteen fan in the world. I mean, if I hear some of his songs, when they're on the radio, I either flip the channel, or if it's something like Born in USA or the Philadelphia theme song, I might listen to that. Yeah,
really?
I know that
That's the song you listen to? Not Born to Run, the energy-filled ones?
yeah, Born to Run, Hungry Heart,
Thunder Road?
Dancing in the Dark. What's the one for the Rustlers is actually nice, but that's not something you listen to on a good. It's just like you think of all the dead wrestlers, sadly. But no, this movie, I mean, I think I'm with you with this one. It just, I didn't come out of it feeling as if I became a Bruce Springsteen fan all of a sudden, because now I learned all these new things about him, that he fought depression and he recorded this album that the record company didn't want because it was too avant-garde, it was too personal. I mean, there were aspects of that I did enjoy seeing it from a trivial standpoint. And I think Jeremy Allen White certainly does a serviceable job playing Bruce in that period where he's not the superstar yet, but he's well known, where he can sort of balance between playing in a stadium, but then also going to the Stone Pony and giving a small show for the local Jersey crowd to show he's still rooted in his community. But other than that, I didn't feel like there was a whole lot of bite to it. The love story feels very tacked on just to have it there. It's not like, hey, this is a pivotal moment in his life where, his personal life took a turn. No, it's all about this one album that, yes, was personally important for him, but it wasn't, it was not Born in the USA. It was not like the later stuff that he did, or even if they went as far back as when he started out with the Born to Run album, then that probably would have been a bigger deal. But then you would have to do an entire full story about him to where he is now. So I think by making it very selective, yeah, it just, I felt myself getting kind of bored after the first hour. And I don't pin that necessarily on the actors. I pin that on Scott Cooper as the choice for director. I think Mangold, with the Bob Dylan movie, he made it engaging enough with all the other performances around Timothy Chalamet. It wasn't just like totally his show. And I'm not a Bob Dylan fan, but he certainly was able to tap into some things that worked and certainly can relate to. Whereas Springsteen, it was just that one slice of his life. And you got a director that moves at a very snail pace in his style of direction. And that's where I think it just doesn't play. So I'm not going to say it's terrible. I would just give it a mild recommendation.
Wow, you actually, I see. I wouldn't give it a recommendation at all. I don't think it's a horrible film, but unless you're a Bruce purist, maybe, then I'd say watch the film. But I'm sorry, like you said, I found myself kind of bored at times watching this film. But I will say, maybe because of the lack of real on-screen interest, I ended up listening to Nebraska, which an album I've never listened to before, and I started listening to a few early Bruce Springsteen albums. So it kind of had a weird positive reverse effect on me, where it's like usually people watch, what was it, that Queen biopic, and they go out and they're like, oh, I gotta see this, I gotta get all into the music catalog. This, because I didn't like the movie as much, I was like, let me check out, maybe let the song speak what the movie couldn't. So I listened to a bunch of albums. So far, Born to Run, my favorite album. I like Nebraska, but I love Born to Run. All bangers.
Mhm.
And also, I know, you can't fit everything into a person's life, and I know dramatically it works for the story, but there was like no mention of Bruce's sisters and, who most of us know, Pamela Springsteen, former actress, and from the 1980s. And I mean, I'm happy to see Gabby Hoffman and stuff, but I always remember Gabby Hoffman as young. So it's hard seeing her in all these films playing older in television shows.
That's the crazy thing. She's only like maybe like a year older than me, and she looks old.
She looks up there. I'm like, she looks old. Like, she don't look like, she doesn't look like an Ozempic patient where it's like, hey, I'm 30, but I look 65. She doesn't look that bad. But I don't know. It's like, I've heard that when you're a porn actress, if you get gray in your hair, and then all of a sudden you're playing MILF roles. So it feels like kind of like that with her. It's like she's of the age to still be playing modern women, but it seems like all directors are like, nah, I want you to play this guy's mom. Where it's like, damn. I can't play like his ex-wife, maybe. Like maybe she could have been the Jersey girl he met. No, instead, let's find a blonde, blue-eyed Jersey girl who works as a waitress. But yet nobody bats an eye whenever Bruce stops by her job, to pick her up or eat with her and her daughter. And so, like I said, I wanted to like it more than I actually did, but I can't give it a recommendation. And I like Scott Cooper. I'll admit I haven't seen Crazy Heart with Jeff Bridges, but I thought he'd bring that kind of energy here. It's sort of like how James Mangold is kind of now a veteran at these biofilms with Walk the Line and now this, the Bob Dylan. So he knows how to do it. I think him and Scott Cooper maybe need to like have a conversation about like, why isn't mine coming to life? So that is Springsteen, Deliver Me from Nowhere. Mild recommendation from Andre. No recommendation from me. Now, next, we go to a film. I'm already biased because it was on my top 10 of the year. We're going to talk about Blue Moon, directed by Richard Linklater, written by Robert Capello, and Oscar-nominated Ethan Hawke playing Lorenz Hart at the heart of this film. I'm no Andre. Well, since we obviously kind of know how I feel about the film, I'll go into more detail later. Andre, how did you? What did you think of Blue Moon? And
I'm going to be perfectly honest with you, Jeff. I think after I watched this film, I started to question if the Oscars got it right with the Best Actor winner, because this really was some of the best work I've seen Ethan Hawke do in a long time. I mean, and I don't know all that much about Rodgers and Hammerstein. I hear the name, I see the name on the billboards, when you're on Broadway, but to see him actually play that particular guy and have it all set in one location like that. I mean, first of all, that's just the magic of Richard Linklater. He could take anything. He could take a big film and make it into something that's worthwhile and diverse. And then he could take a small movie and make it engaging without ever feeling boring. And I think Ethan Hawke just chews up the screenery at every turn. Bobby Cannavale they probably could have gotten somebody better. It's probably it's what you expect from him. But it's just like a very charming film, and it's just there's no serious drama other than when Andrew Scott comes in. There's a little back and forth between those guys, but other than that, it's just you almost feel for what was his name again in the movie?
Lorenz Hart.
Yeah, Lorenz Hart. You really do feel for him at points because it seems like this guy is the real genius behind all these great Broadway musicals, and at times seems like he doesn't get enough credit for that work. And so, yet he has a spark in his eye all throughout, which I guess is also masking that pain and suffering he's going through. And just somehow Hawk just manages to pull it off with all the different nuances and just the memorable quotes in that film, and constantly the Casablanca callbacks in there. I really enjoyed it. I would definitely give it a recommendation. And yeah, I'm feeling like he probably should have been the one to win the Oscar over Michael B. Jordan. Not that Michael B. Jordan didn't deserve it, but it's one of those things where I'm like, maybe he could have waited out a couple more years and that great part would come along. Whereas Ethan Hawke, I mean, that time could still come eventually, but I mean, this was like, for somebody that's been in the game since he was such a small child, like, this is the moment right here to give him something. And it's with Richard Linklater, a longtime collaborator. I would have liked to have seen that. It was a really good role.
Yeah, I love this. I had to see this on the big screen before it left the big screen. I think I took this film maybe a little personally, because I saw some parallels in the character, but the film is just magical. I like the fact they don't shy away from his bisexualism. I mean, obviously not showing anything on screen, but also that dynamic with Margaret Qualley. And this is like one of her better roles, especially coming off The Substance, the movie. Not like she was a former addict. But like I thought she was excellent in this film as kind of his female friend who he's romantically interested in, and kind of Rogers inadvertently steals by the end of the film, and because she only sees Lorenz Hart in a certain way. And it's a tragedy, especially when we find out what happened eventually to Lorenz Hart. But the thing that made me interested is, like, by the end of the film, you kind of want to look up old Lorenz Hart songs and see if they're kind of confessionals in their own way. And also even like read about him since he died kind of young. And I know a lot of people complain about the height thing where I guess they had to kind of move around the set to make Ethan Hawke look shorter, sort of like think John Leguizamo and Moulin Rouge.
That kind of weirded me out. There were points where, like, Margaret Qualley can't be that tall.
Yeah. Especially considering we're used to Ethan Hawke being of a certain height. But I'm going to admit, I've had a certain bias in the past when it came to Ethan Hawke. But his more recent work, I think he's been, ever since Training Day, he's been on a roll, where I really think he's coming into his own as an actor, and even maybe minorly as a poet. For the interview he gave that's now meme worthy on Unrequited Love, which goes with his character that he played. Like you said, it's Bobby Cannavale, so I'm just like, this is typical roles, so I'm not going to really go in on him. But to me, this truly shows the talent of Richard Linklater, because there was a time, for a patch of time, where Richard Linklater, I'm not going to say the movies were bad, but he seemed off, or they weren't as engaging. But he still manages to find sometimes the simplest of stories and inject character and life into these stories that make them so captivating. Think Bernie with Jack Black. But even, I know nobody saw this movie, but Me and Orson Welles with Zac Efron and Claire Danes, for instance. Even that film is better than you expect it to be. And then sometimes you have those films that should be more interesting from him that aren't that great, like the Newton Boys, or when he decided to go Hollywood and it was like, hey, I'm going to direct School of Rock.
I like School of Rock.
It's cute, but I wouldn't think Richard Linklater when I watch that film. And
they went overboard when they're like, "Oh, let's have him do Bad News Bears." Like, no, I mean,
see, and that was the problem, because then I don't know why that decision was made. Only we can, if he wants to ever be interviewed by us. Like, why did you go kind of the studio route with that? Because my thing was, if you were going to go full dirty comedy, Bad News Bears, it should be kind of as shocking as maybe the Walter Matthau version was, with the cursing and the dark comedy. And instead, it just feels sanitized when you watch it.
yeah.
But even his spiritual sequel to Dazed and Confused, Everybody Wants Some, was surprisingly like, it wasn't as classic as obviously Dazed and Confused, but there was a spark there that keeps you interested. And I think that's his power as a director, is that he's all about character and having those human moments, but also kind of shocking the audience with how much you're going to get to and like these characters. I think his movies, you have to have a central main character who's interesting, who you will follow throughout this, and then load up a bunch of other quirky or other interesting characters. So obviously, I highly recommend this film, because I know a lot of people out here have not seen it or maybe even heard of it. But do yourself the favor and check this film out. Would you recommend or highly recommend this film?
I'm going to highly recommend it. I think it's just solid acting all around. And again, a movie you don't get enough of now. Just people having conversation and making it worthwhile, where it's not obstructive camera work or stylized editing. It's just a story set in a bar, and better than most of these blockbusters we get these days, with some exceptions.
Which, interestingly enough, I also have to say about our next film. But I will say, as my final word on the show, is that also think of it, Blue Moon, as like when you're at a bar, you meet a stranger and they tell you an interesting story, and they somehow manage to make it so vivacious. You're picturing it in your head, and you're more interested than you expect to. And then you unfortunately never see that person again. But that story, or the stories he told you, stick with you. That's what it's like watching Blue Moon. So I highly recommend. Now we're going to move on to a film I have a lot to say about, and it kind of shocked me. And this is, out of all the films we watched, the thing I watched most recently. We're going to talk about Is This Thing On?, which is directed by Bradley Cooper, who has a supporting role in the film. And it stars and is co-written by Will Arnett. And basically, it's about a guy going through a divorce, and Highwall one night wanders into an open mic and starts using stand-up comedy as his therapy. I'll just go with that without revealing too much. But the film stars Will Arnett, Bradley Cooper, Laura Dern, the most shocking cast member, Audra Day, who's really good here. Sean Hayes, who I have to say, he always pops into movies unexpectedly and without like big, fanfare. And it's just like, I know he's friends with Will Arnett, Jason Bateman, and all of them. And I'm glad he's in this movie, but they don't really give him much to do. It's like The Running Man, where it's like, okay, Sean Hayes is in this, but it's like, okay, you're not giving him much. And he's a Tony Award winner at this point. Syrian Hines shocked me, because he plays Will Arnett's father. And throughout the film, I'm like, I know who that actor is, but what's his name? And where have I seen him before? And, he's one of those actors like Richard Jenkins, Jim Broadbent, and when he was alive, now I can't think of his name. The one who was in Michael Clayton, British actor, in The Full Monty.
Oh, no, I was going to say Bill Murray. He's still alive. I don't know.
But he's one of those actors who you could give just a little bit with, and
Pete Postlethwaite? Or
no, not Pete Postlethwaite, another actor who deserved more respect. No, he was also in Black Knight, surprisingly.
Mm-hmm. Oh, Tom Wilkinson.
Yeah, Tom Wilkinson. Syrian Hines is like one of those type of actors. You can give him just a sliver of a role, and he'll make the most of it, And he doesn't have that much screen time, but by the end of the film, he's the character I remember the most out of this film, just for his handful of scenes as Will Arnett's father. Now, we all know me and Bradley Cooper. We have an up and down relationship when it comes more, especially to his directing. I'm not the biggest A Star is Born fan, even though I love all the previous ones. And the Leonard Bernstein film he made, I think looks visually great, but I think is very pretentious, but is worth watching. Here, oddly, this film works in many ways, but it also doesn't work in one way that bothered me throughout. Because the first half of this film, I was like, Bradley Cooper, you might have made a modern classic, buddy. Then the second half hits, and then I'm like, and you dropped. I was more interested in the Will Arnett still kind of in love with his wife, going through the divorce, going through being a single parent, discovering this stand-up. That felt fresh and, kind of alive. When we get into the more relationship stuff with him and Laura Dern, I like that aspect, but it feels like it goes on for too long. Even though both performers are very good. Laura Dern, of course, is like a national treasure. She's like the indie Meryl Streep at his point. And I liked I even liked Bradley Cooper playing a character named Balls. And I love the camera work. He still keeps that going, like the action alive with his camera work. And as you were saying with Blue Moon, I like this film for that same reason. This is something, maybe we're getting older, but I like an adult comedy drama that treats the audience with respect, doesn't dumb it down, doesn't make this a whole big, we got to watch him as he rises through his comedy career. That soon takes a backseat to the romance. I like it's uncomfortable. It's maybe at times a little too quirky, but I have to say, out of all of Bradley Cooper's films, I think this is the one I like the most, surprisingly. And I'm not used to Will Arnett being so dramatic. And he handles it expertly. The only problem is he's worked so much over the years, especially in voiceover, that sometimes in scenes when he's trying to be dramatic, I can start thinking of his past comedic characters saying these same lines. And it's like, okay, that kind of took me out of the scene. But I'm going to give Bradley Cooper my first, not high recommend, but better than recommendation. I'm going to give it, I'm just going to give it an upper recommendation, but not high recommendation. Andre, what did you think of Is This Thing On?
Somewhere in the middle with where you are with it. I think that I give Bradley Cooper kudos on his direction, camera work, cinematography. Will Arnett and Laura Dern, they work very well in this film. Who played the female comedian that he hooks up with?
I don't know her name. I expected it to be Chloe Radcliffe, but no, she was the one who was just encouraging throughout. Well, in the future, just put her name on the bottom of the screen. Yeah. I can't. I don't know her name, unfortunately. I've never seen her stand up either.
Well, weirdly, that was like one of my favorite things about the film was that whole, like, it's a brief, obviously a physical fling, but that's pretty damn real for the way that was handled and how funny that was at the same time.
And they didn't make it a big thing for like right. That hangs over the rest of the film. And
yeah, so I enjoyed that. I also really enjoyed the scene when he goes to the club after he goes through some shit and then he gets into that angry rant that's not even like a bit. He's just trying to vent his frustration. And even though we've seen that in multiple films, I think it works here. But yeah, I mean, I think definitely one of the issues for me is that I've seen this movie already with films like Punchline and Funny People. And maybe they're this is a little cut better than those two, because I think Punchline has a lot of issues and Funny People just has tonal issues and it's way too long.
Too long.
Yeah, obviously Judd Apatow, that's what you expect from him. But this film, I think, works to a point. And like I said, the first half is great. The whole setup with how he finds his groove as a stand-up comedian, and then the second half where the stuff with the marriage and the back and forth, that's where you kind of take me off a bit, especially when like they go off like Bradley Cooper's house or something like that. That is like, I don't know if we needed all that stuff. I think just keep it a Will Arnett, you're good. But when you start trying to go into all these other places, and Bradley Cooper didn't need to be in this movie. That could have been safe for any other actor.
It could have, but it works because it puts another name, on the star list to get people. And we recently did an interview with somebody who is friends with or has worked with Bradley Cooper. And so he gave me another insight into Bradley Cooper, so that I still have my issues, just more from his career standpoint than anything personal. But I feel like him playing balls, I don't believe I had to say that in a sentence, but that character to me encapsulates how Bradley Cooper has always been presented to me. Like this guy who wants to be deep, but everything works out for, doesn't seem particularly in the know or smart, but everything works out for. And that's how it always Bradley Cooper has always been presented to me. But I kind of liked him being in the film because to me, I don't know, maybe it was a personal thing between me and him, but it's like, yeah, this kind of answers a lot in how I see him. But also, I think Bradley Cooper is one of these actors. He's like Mark Wahlberg. He's a pretty boy, but I think he excels when he plays off the wall, like when he was in Licorice Pizza as John Peters. And just him here as balls, it works because he's just so out of it, not playing his usual suave self, just like Silver Linings Playbook, which, strangely enough, that one's a better film, but it kind of works as a double feature. Because, and the scene you were praising with Will Arnett, the angry scene, I think that's as raw as this film gets. But I also like the analogy of how he at first has a poster of Laura Dern as an athlete that he keeps to inspire the children. And we see their different perspectives of, what that photo means. I like that. But also, this film reminded me a lot of being like a funnier version of Marriage Story by Noah Baumbach. And I don't, maybe it's the Laura Dern connection. I mean, Marriage Story is more memorable, but I feel like I like this one more because maybe this one was a little more identifiable, But yeah, I am going to give this, like I said, I'm going to give this higher than a regular recommendation, but not a high recommendation. How did you feel about is this thing on?
Mild recommendation for me.
I think Bradley Cooper needs to stick to this type of film, not make everything so grandiose as he has in the past, unless he's really dealing with a subject, or at least for a little while. Like this is his Licorice Pizza, maybe before the next One Battle After Another. Not that I'm saying he's that level of director, but and I mean he is in the know because I know in the past many different interviews, people have said that, he's really into stand-up comedy. So he actually seems to have a passion about stand-up comedians and that world. And so I'm glad he got to work this out and he got to work with his buddy, Will Arnett. But, it gave me a new respect for Mr. Cooper. And please, more people, hire Andra Day. Yes, she was in that Lee Daniels horror film that, for me, worked as campy classic. But I thought she was even really good as the kind of vengeful best friend. And, so married to Bradley Cooper of all people. So, but yeah, that was Is This Thing On? Next, the film Andre not forced me to watch. I had interest, but since we needed something to talk about, we got this. The Mike Shanks directed, Dave Franco starring, and Alison Brie starring Together. Now, let me say the storyline, and then I'm going to hand it off to you, Andre. This is about a couple that moves, I think, upstate New York. He's a musician. She's a teacher. He moves for her. They buy a house. so she can teach upstate. And they go hiking one day, discover this cave that they get lost in, and drink from the well there. And all of a sudden, after that, they find that they are literally starting to get to connect to each other physically, or they can't separate. Um, and they're trying to figure out what to do and how to solve this. That's as much as I'm going to go into without spoiling it. So, Andre, oh, just to let people know, this is also kind of a body horror film. What did you think of Together?
This was very visceral and disturbing all at once. Because I think we saw the trailer for some other A24 movie when was coming out. And so, like, I don't know, there's something interesting about it that they start to get the physical contact that they can't break apart, and then how twisted it gets as it proceeds. Um, Sorry, it's been a while since I've seen it, but what I
Okay.
know is that um, I don't think I've seen anything that disturbing since The Substance in terms of the way
Really?
the way they did the special effects with how their bodies kind of contort and start to meld themselves together. There's a whole backstory about the previous couple that the same shit happens to them. So I like that whole unfolding mystery that builds, and then that whole disturbing thing with the neighbor. Yeah, that was really fucked up. Um, I think, yeah, for two actors that are primarily known for comedy, I thought they did pretty good here. So I give this one a recommendation. I would say more, but like I said, I'm sick. It's been a while since I've seen it.
It's okay. I will try to fill in. Together, look, I'm not a big body horror fan. Obviously David Cronenberg is a master of this. I was impressed by the special effects, and I will let it be known, even though she's married to her co-star Dave Franco for years, I have a huge crush on Allison Brie. So I will watch her in almost anything. And though this is more of a showcase for him, Dave Franco, I really enjoyed this film. And, especially as they're a couple who constantly works together, I thought that was an interesting dynamic, having a real couple play a couple on screen that's having problems, because obviously he wants to be on the road and play music, and she more wants to settle down, but he still kind of wants to be out there, not cheat necessarily, but have his freedom. And then we find out things about his past as to why maybe he's running away from relationships. And I mean, this is a disturbing film. I don't think I found it as disturbing as you, because I thought it was going to be much worse. Because all you got to tell me is body horror, and I'm like already expecting the worst. And for me, this was kind of like, oh, it's not as bad as I thought it was going to be, but it is freaky. I will say that. And especially the weird ending, which I think kind of has something to say about the T and LGBTQ, but, that's for another day to really analyze that. But I mean, for the most part, I really enjoyed this film. I give it a recommendation, only because it was better than I thought. It didn't change my world. It's no Titan or The Substance, but it's in that league, I will say. Dave Franco, I gotta wonder what's with the mullet, bro. Because that was the most disturbing part of me. Like, I hope there's a scene where he gets a haircut, because that is disturbing me. So, but I really am surprised at how much I enjoyed it. I don't think I'm gonna run and watch it again, but I would recommend it to a friend and tell them, "Yay, you want something a little different?" It's kind of it's still kind of more mainstream, but it's something you wouldn't necessarily expect. Though the trailer pretty much tells you all you need. But I know it's supposed to be a harrowing scene, but it was that scene, like you said, when they're contorting and she's like doing the exorcist almost spider walk, and he's being like led by his crotch. I'm sorry, there was something slightly humorous to me about that. It reminded me of like the Daniels music video of Turn Down for What, when the people's bodies take over and they can't help what they're doing, the dancing. But like I said, I give it a recommendation. I'm surprised at how much I liked it. And unfortunately, this ends the art portion of the show, because the next two movies we're going to reveal are pure blockbuster theatrical releases. We are going to first, out of the two, talk about Predator Badlands, where Dan Trachtenberg keeps continuing his Predator movies after we got the Native Americans versus Predator movie. And then he just wastes all these other sequel ideas in an animated film where we get people from different time periods facing the Predator, where you could have got 3 solid sequels out of that. But, I'm sure he has his reasons. And here we get Predator Badlands, where it's the audience-friendly Predator whose brother gets murdered in the beginning for trying to save him, trying to prove to his father that he's a warrior. So he goes into this planet that's practically inhabitable for anyone to take this big predator beast and prove himself, where he runs into an android that is only half alive and looking for its other, I guess, half. Well, its full human half sister, and they form a buddy comedy throughout as they face the challenges of the planet together. And just for y'all who don't like it, this is heavily subtitled because the alien speaks its language, but Elle Fanning speaks English throughout. I like this film more than I expected to, but I can't give it a full recommendation. I don't like this audience-friendly Predator look. That was strange for me. And plus with the dreads, and I'm like, are you kind of trying to say that predators are black? I kept wondering throughout the film, with its look, because it kind of reminds me of Corey Glover, from In Living Color, the band. He was never on the show, unfortunately. Though, did they ever do like one of those like special appearances at the end where somebody performs?
It's possible. I'd have to go for IMDb to check that out.
Yeah, because it seems like it would be a natural fit because they still were a band at the time. But in this film, I mean, if you're looking for an action-packed Predator film, this is the film for you. But what bothered me was it's not as hardcore a Predator film. It just felt a little too like teen and audience friendly because, it's not as gory, obviously, as previous films, but also a likable Predator who like forms a family, kind of. I'm just like, oh, please. Though, strangely enough, Elle Fanning, I think this is one of her better performances recently. Again, I haven't seen Sentimental Value, but like, she's praised for all these indie films. I'm like, she's kind of what works in this film. I liked her in the dual roles throughout. But other than that, I just felt like this might as well have been an animated film because there's so much CGI and AI through it all, even with all these like other aliens and little things. And yes, I noticed the Duffer Brothers as the voice of the computer. Cute, but not all that, wow, you guys are cool. Like I said, I can't give it a full recommendation. I give it a mild recommendation. What did you think of Predator Badlands? And
the way you describe this film, it almost sounds like the equivalent of Predator's version of RoboCop 3, which I gotta say, this is a better movie than RoboCop 3.
Yes, evidently, I'll give you that.
Yeah, I ended up thoroughly enjoying it, and I went into this movie with a very low bar myself, because when I heard it was PG-13 and the Predator was going to be the good guy, I said, this is going to suck. This is going to be terrible. But I'll give it credit where credit's due because of Dan Trachtenberg. He figured out a way to make it entertaining overall. And the chemistry with the Predator and Elle Fanning, I thought was pretty fun. And even the little monkey creature that they add, which I thought was just going to be like a one-scene thing, then that turned out to be a bigger plot. I was kind of like half and half. I thought sometimes it was cute. Sometimes it was just maybe this is too much. We're trying to really soften a franchise that once was this great Arnold Schwarzenegger vehicle that, he just never did the follow-ups, and I don't blame him. But I thought, this had a decent amount of action at the right length, and the tie-in with Weyland Yutani as the villains this time around to keep it kind of tied with the Predator, the Alien universe. I thought that was a pretty cool thing to have that set up and have them going around trying to get different creatures from different planets. And I don't know if you noticed this, Jeff, but on the Predator ship with its trophies, you could see the alien head from Independence Day, since Disney owns that from the Fox.
Oh no, see, I didn't notice that.
Yeah, so not saying they're going to do a new Independence Day movie, probably not for a while, but I can kind of see where Disney's thinking right now. Like, oh yeah, let's throw all the aliens into one movie one of these days. And man, I hope they don't do that, because that would be a freaking disaster in making. But this film was fine for what it was. I don't think it's as good as Prey. Nothing will ever top the original Predator as far as I'm concerned. But I think Trachtenberg definitely got the franchise on a better track than where it had been going since Predator 2. And so I will give it just a recommendation. I think it's a fine film. I'd like to see more of what he plans to do, because there have been rumors with possibly another animated special. They might bring back Arnold. They might bring back Danny Glover, at least in voiceover form, because who wants to see Danny Glover with a walking cane and Arnold not being the Arnold we remember him being? So, yeah, I think it's a fine film. It's enjoyable.
Hey, we are getting King Conan, so maybe Arnold will come back. And
yeah, but the National Enquirer reported that. I don't know how serious Arnold is.
I hope it happens. As long
Me
as
too. I want it to happen, but just time's ticking.
As long as it's not PG-13. And then, like Predator 2, look, I like Predator 2, but it always feels like a weird, not a sequel, but a weird spinoff, even though the Predator's the only one returning. Because it's like you get this group of character actors in an action film.
And King Willie.
And my thing is also, especially knowing that the Gary Busey part was originally written for that to be Dutch, So I was about to say, so Dutch is kind of an asshole in the sequel, huh? So who gets killed? Spoiler alert. Come on, it's been over 20 years for anybody who's like, thanks for ruining Predator 2, my man. It's like, come on, guys. But, like I said, it's interesting where the Predator, family goes, but it also kind of feels like Friday the 13th. You never know where it's going to go next, And we keep coming, and I'm liking the creative way. I still feel like they can do something sort of with Shane Black's if it wasn't for that stupid ending. With, that's my suit. Like, really? Is that what we're going to movie? Shane, come on. You're original. What's happening here? I'm still, look, if there's another Predator sequel announced, I'm still gonna be interested. So it's not like after this one I'm like, fuck you, and I'm never watching another Predator movie. Sorry, we just got demonetized with that one. You can believe it. But like I said, I think if you're a Predator fan, you'll enjoy this one. It's not the best, but it's an interesting next chapter in the story. And for our final film, we come to a recent release. That's right. Me and Andre went to the theaters to see Ready or Not 2, Here I Come, with Radio Silence returning, writing, directing, producing, as well as Samara Weaving, the Margot Robbie twin, and Catherine Newton. Yeah. And Sarah Michelle Gellar, my man David Cronenberg, not making quite the impact Abel Ferrara made in Marty Supreme, but it's nice to see him on screen. It's shockingly Sean Hatosi. You know who I'm talking about, y'all. The Faculty. It's trying to think who are the other regular. Kevin Durand and Jeez, sorry. I'm blanking on some of these other actors' names.
Yeah, that Spanish guy.
Nestor Cabernal, who plays Spanish and Italian so much, I can't tell which one he actually is. Originally. We also had Elijah Wood, who's always great when he's on screen. I'm going over the cast list. Olivia.
Oh God.
Oh yes. We also had Olivia Chang as the Asian, I guess, business owner. Dan Barine, who plays more of the comedic guy who's in his bathrobe through most of the film. Obviously, Radio Silence, after their last film, Abigail, is starting to have a company of actors that they always use. And Catherine Newton and Kevin Durant are currently like part of their repertoire. Andre, I'm going to let you talk about what you felt about the film first, and then I'll chime in. What did you think of Ready or Not 2? Here I come.
Liked it. I enjoyed the experience of seeing it in the theater. I thought
Okay, but there was that hesitancy.
I think they waited too long to get it made, and understandably, I think it was because of Scream and because Fox was bought out by Disney, so that probably was like a little bit of a delay to get around to it. But yeah, I mean, I think that the chemistry with Samara Weaving and Kat Newton was fine. You know, for some weird reason, it reminded me of Die with a Vengeance with Bruce Willis and Samuel L. Jackson. Not to that degree of like.
Okay, I was gonna say.
Yeah, not like they're not thrown together. It's really just like the whole sister banter that they have.
Yeah, it never got racial. No, you're a white girl. No, you're a really white girl.
Let's put Samara Weaving in the middle of Harlem with that sign on herself. But yeah, I mean, I think that generally it was the actions are taking. I love the scene when she's fighting the ex-girlfriend or the ex-fiance.
Oh, yes.
And you got the music playing in the ballroom. I thought that was fun. I think my hesitation is that the first one, I think, was a little bit more inventive with how she was getting stalked around the mansion and all the games that are based around how they're supposed to kill her. And this one just felt like, oh, just get a bunch of assassins, just go after them. And it's all around like this one compound. It's basically the same plot, but now, hey, there's a sidekick and then there's a little bit more drama. And I think the sisterhood stuff actually drags the movie down. It doesn't necessarily make it more interesting or make the plot more compelling. It just seems to be like, hey, we got to have a stop for a moment because these two have these unresolved issues. It's like, well, wait a minute. You know, we just went through this whole movie where this girl got suckered into this family and now all of a sudden, you know, they're trying to hunt her down. Now we're getting into this family drama that's totally unnecessary. And so I think that's the one thing where this movie falls short of the original. And, you know, some of the killers that they put together, like the two Indian guys, I'm surprised they didn't get Aziz Ansari for one of them because maybe that guy was a clone of him, the way he was performing. And, you know, and they tried to make it very pulpy. You got the one kid of the Spanish guy that's cursing, and then he starts to go out looking to get the kills done, and you know, a couple of other crazy things here and there. But you know, I think that ultimately it probably should have went straight to streaming as opposed to the theater. I'm sorry to say, doesn't mean I didn't like the movie. I would just give it a mild recommendation because I think Ready or Not would have just stood on its own just fine without a follow up. Not that this was terrible, but again, tried to like add that family element to it really ends up making it a notch down from the original.
I agree. I think this should have gone straight stream because also I felt like at least Ready or Not at times was inventive visually. Here it felt kind of bland visually. I also felt like it feels a little watered down. You know, I mean, the violence is on screen, but like you were saying, the only time I felt some originality was the you know, the ex-fiance and Samara Weaving fighting. You know, that was the only time I felt there was originality, other than maybe the weird sibling relationship between Sarah Michelle Gellar and Sean Tosi. Yeah. And I thought, surprisingly, that was one of the better elements. Those two in this film, I think, are very excellent and need to definitely be in more different films. And scarily, Sean Hatosi does look like David Cronenberg, like he could be his son. So, and this is like one of his strongest performances I've ever seen, even though his fight scene with Catherine Newton kind of reminded me of the James Gandolfini, Patricia Arquette scene and
It
True
got
Romance.
uncomfortable. Yeah.
Exactly. Like there's a little too much glee, and when he's beating her up, I mean, the comedic elements did work, like again, the ex-fiance and still, mad at her over that. The rules of they can't really kill each other or they damn each other. I understand it's trying to build the world, but it also kind of makes you wonder, were you on a limited budget? Because we say it damns the family line, but it would have been nice for them, maybe even in a brief scene, to show how it damages the family without them all exploding necessarily. I like the scene where, she has all those shards in her and they're taking them out slowly, and that's their way of bonding. But I just wish like some of the other characters had something to do. And I can use a Minority Report on this film because, like you said, the two Indian guys, you said with Aziz Ansari, like, spoiler alert, why are they the first ones like eliminated? And the same thing with the Asian woman and Nestor Cabernal's character.
See, I thought there was going to be something more with the Asian woman because I said at a certain point, one of these killers is eventually going to turn and try to help her out. And then that whole twist where she accidentally kills one of these guys and then, the obvious ends up happening to her. I was like, well, you had an interesting plot point and then you just sort of like pulled the rug from under it. And that's not cool, especially when you're left behind with the son that just cares about his Wi-Fi.
And he seemed like he was only there for comedic reasons.
Yeah,
like
he serves no purpose.
Exactly. And I mean, with that scene also, I guess maybe they were trying to make fun because it seemed like she's going to be the Adam Brody of this movie. And then it's like, oh, nope, guess not. And again, little things that were like there for more comedic, like the little kid with the Uzis, there could have been so much more. And he doesn't in particular seem upset that his father and sister are no longer around, so it's just like, okay, that's weird. The first film was more thrilling. This film felt like it was more playing for laughs at times. So that is my problem with the film. And I think maybe I hyped it up too much in my own mind, considering I'm such a big fan of Ready or Not. And even though it was a hit, there are a lot of people who still have not discovered Ready or Not. And I would say, go see that film. Maybe if you like it, see this, but you can definitely wait for streaming. This isn't go see it in the theaters, So I give it a mild recommendation. I didn't love it. I didn't. It's like something you have to work with. Like, you don't like it, but I can work with it. But I think there was a lot of opportunity here, and they kind of dropped it many times. And so, but please, more movies with Sarah Michelle Gellar. I hope her and Sean Hatosi become part of their repertoire, and even throw in Elijah Wood because he always is interesting when he does these little supporting roles in films. Just like I thought they were going to do something more like The Marriage that got interrupted and thrown out. And he's like, oh, you can do better. And they kind of leave it like that, except to leave it maybe as a setup for a set piece later on. And I thought like, oh, there's going to be something more with that. And again, it just seems like the film drops the ball more times than it's successful. So that is all of our business for this week. But as you know, we always have unfinished business. But before we go, Andre, what film would you recommend to the people?
Have you seen the movie Rated X, starring Charlie Sheen and Emilio Estevez? If not, one up because it's fucking awesome, and it's on Tubi.
We can never get out of the Charlie Sheen, Emilio Estevez universe.
No.
Have you seen Urchin? Or written and directed by Harris Dickinson. If not, why not? Because fucking awesome. and it's on Hulu. And before we go, let me tell you where you can see some of these films that are not playing. You can catch Springsteen, Deliver Me From Nowhere, on Hulu. You can catch Is This Thing On? Also on Hulu. Blue Moon, you can catch on HBO Max, I believe. Together, Hulu. Predator Badlands, Hulu. Ready or Not To, only in theaters current. And with that, we bid you adieu.